Bucky Irving is here to stay, but we might be a little worried about Chase Brown and Rico Dowdle as being just one-hit wonders. We debate if certain players are one-hit wonders or here to stay on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk. And when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. And I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first dollar bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we had a lot of players break out this year, whether it be rookies or guys in their second, third year. And we're going to discuss each position with the guys that broke out and say if we think they were just a one-hit wonder or here to stay and be great for fantasy for a long time. Starting at running backs with Bucky Irving, I know my answer. I think we're pretty much agreeing here. He is here to stay. He balled out as a rookie. And I just think that moving forward, the Buccaneers have found their running back for at least the next few seasons.
Yeah, and I think we got a good idea during the playoff game that Bucky Irving was the main man here. Rashad White, afterthought. Sean Tucker had that one random big game in the middle of the season, then he disappeared. So really it's Bucky Irving, and he's up there among the best rookies this season with Jane Daniels, Bo Nix, Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, all those really good players, Brian Thomas Jr. He was right up there, and you would say that he was the best running back because he led all running backs who were rookies in rushing yards this season. So wasn't the strongest class, so that may not be as a bold statement to say, but look, I don't think anyone expected that. We thought Rashad White and him were going to split carries, and he had some upside, but then it started to become a takeover around midseason. Say, look, he should be our alpha. He finishes well in the red zone. He's not a bad pass catcher as well, and that started to hurt Rashad White as well, because who scored on a receiving ball? It was Bucky Irving, not Rashad White in the playoff game. So that kind of confirmed, okay, in those key situations, in the biggest games, we're going to trust Bucky Irving a little bit more than Rashad White. Rashad White has been okay, but he was a severely inefficient runner. He was drafted and used mainly to be that kind of James White type guy for Tom Brady. And now that you're seeing a different style of offense, Liam Cohen, long ago, right? I mean, that's a totally different situation from Bruce Arians to Dave Canales. And now you get to Liam Cohen. Bucky Irving is the featured guy now over Rashad White. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with White. I think he's still a pretty good backup. Not bad to have this 1-2 punch, but Irving is certainly the man. Not a one-hit wonder. Some guy you're going to be drafting. Would you say he's about a high-end RB2? There's so many guys in that RB1 range. I'm not sure if he can go to the top 12, but it'll be pretty close, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you're comparing him to other rookies. You can compare him to other vets, though. I mean, he only averaged fewer yards per carry than Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and Jahmyr Gibbs. Only averaged fewer yards per carry when there was a neutral stacked box against him than Derrick Henry. He forced a missed tackle on 37% of his rush attempts in 2024. Best among running backs with at least 200 carries. The next closest was Bijan Robinson at 32%. So 5% more of the time was Bucky Irving creating those missed tackles. And then expected points added per carry. Only Jahmyr Gibbs and Derrick Henry had a higher expected EPA per carry than Irving, with Saquon Barkley and Bijan Robinson right behind Irving. While two other guys we're going to talk about, Rico Dowdle and Chase Brown, they each had a negative EPA per carry. So let's talk about Chase Brown, because I think he's the next most talented guy in this group we're going to talk about. Bucky Irving, we feel like it's going to hold that role easily. Now, Chase Brown, we'll see if the Bengals bring in someone else to compete with him. I still think he's going to have a role in this offense, but do you think he showed enough as a lead back for them to keep him? I'll just say his explosive play rate was 10% of rushing attempts, which was the fifth lowest among running backs with 200 plus carries. And he faced a light box on 52% of rush attempts this year, second highest among running backs with 200 plus carries. So that means he was in an easy situation because Joe Burrow was so good and that passing game was so good. And he still wasn't breaking off those explosive plays at a high rate at all. So that might be a little worrisome for this team moving forward.
Yeah, I think that was the intent, that he was going to be the change of pace to Zach Moss and give you those plays. But once he had to take over and Zach Moss went on the shelf, by the way, he's on a 2-year deal, Moss. So he can come back next year. I don't know how healthy he will be. I don't know how much the Bengals want to commit to him now after this major injury, but there's always someone they can bring in, right? I mean, whether it's him or, like, say, they're interested in Aaron Jones to replace Zach Moss, somebody to come in that knows this offense pretty well, that can make a transition here, that a veteran that you want to put with Chase Brown. I'm not totally convinced they're just going to hand those feature touches to Chase Brown. A lot of things circumstantially worked in their favor. They also were a team that were passing a ton because their defense stunk, and that's what they had to do in a lot of games. They had to pass to win at a very high volume. With Joe Burrow, I still think it's a pass-first, pass-heavy team that you're going to have going forward now that there's no changes with Zach Taylor and what they're doing. There's no danger of him. Looks like he's cleared the firing potential here. So this offense is going to be the same. I think they'll look for maybe diversifying this backfield. I don't think Chase Brown is Joe Mixon, right? They had Joe Mixon in there, but even with Mixon, they've worked in Samaje Perine at certain parts. So I think in general, this team likes two backs, and I think that's their preferred. It was just out of necessity. They had to give Brown all those key workloads.
Yeah, and another guy. So I will say I feel better about Chase Brown keeping his role than this next guy we're going to talk about, Rico Dowdle. I think Rico Dowdle was a one-hit wonder for sure, and it was even a full year wonder, right? It was a few games, but this team kind of reminds me of the Buccaneers from last year, where the Cowboys ranked 27th in rushing yards, 30th in yards per carry, and last in rushing touchdowns. They had 0 rushes of 30 plus yards this year. Only team to not have a carry of 30 plus yards. They only had 1 carry of 25 plus yards, which is insane because Derrick Henry had 14 all by himself, and the Cowboys as a team had 1 all season long. And like Dowdle's speed, he doesn't look slow, but he only hit 15 miles per hour in 10% of his carries this year. Only Kareem Hunt and Ramondre Stevenson had a worse percentage of that. Yes, even Najee Harris was faster than Dowdle on more carries. So I think Rico Dowdle is done. They're going to try to upgrade this position big time, I think, in the draft this year.
Yeah, it's been 9 years since they used a first-round pick on Ezekiel. They actually cut ties with Elliott again at the tail end of the season, just moving on, and I think they're finally done with him. I don't think he's going to come back a third time to this team, and he's washed. So at this point, he's gone. Rico Dowdle was just a guy. They needed somebody. He was their best option. They didn't go sign anyone. They didn't go draft anyone. So you just had to be, by default, the main guy in this backfield with Elliott basically doing nothing. So when you look at that, I think, all signs point to the Cowboys maybe using that first-round pick. Ashton Jeanty, we've talked about a lot. They picked number 12 overall in the first round. They actually took Elliott fourth. I don't think we'll ever see that again. Running back like that go that high, like a Leonard Fournette. No, teams are not going to do that too much in the first round. But I think you can see it coming here. I mean, we did have Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs go high. Would be ideal. We talked about it, Ben Johnson going to the Cowboys, turning Jeanty into his new Jahmyr Gibbs / Dave Montgomery, giving him 20, 25 carries per game. But we also know Jerry Jones likes that, getting one feature back, and is willing to spend. So I think it's going to be a rookie. We'll see. There's some other options. Caleb Johnson, you have Quinn Junkins, some other players that could come out and be effective here for the Cowboys. But I think they'll be all in on a feature back. And look, it's not like last year, Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon and all these guys available. I mean, you're starting with Aaron Jones possibly as your best option. So I think you have to draft a back for the Cowboys, and probably early, and let's hope so. Jeanty and the Cowboys would almost make him a borderline like top 15 pick immediately.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he would be going first round for sure.
Yeah.
And then lastly here, Chuba Hubbard. I don't think we have anything to worry about that his job's going to get taken for next year with Jonathan Brooks, going to likely be sidelined for the majority of the season after tearing his ACL again. And he looked really good. He played really well. All of his stats are great. I think he's going to be like a James Conner type career where maybe he doesn't stick with the Panthers for a super long time. But he's a good running back. I think he's going to stick around in the NFL for a while and just always be that James Conner where he's kind of underrated. So Hubbard definitely has this role with the Panthers next year. Not worried about them drafting another running back early. They have too many other needs. So I think Hubbard is good. Are you with me there?
Yeah, he also got a contract in the middle of the season, so they extended him. Maybe they had some foresight that Jonathan Brooks was going to get hurt again, but the ACL, I mean, Miles Sanders probably has played his last down for Carolina. Let's hope. Let's hope they're not trying to force in Miles Sanders anymore to this offense. But this offense also is on the upswing, right? Bryce Young looked better. So if that offense as a whole is going to move the ball, add a few skill position players to help, whether it's at tight end or anywhere else on this field. I mean, they had Jatavion Sanders, so they could try to get a second tight end there. They could get more help for Xavier Legette. They could do a lot of things here to upgrade Bryce Young. And the one thing that they would do then is move the ball better with Canales like they did in the second half of the season. If they move the ball, more scoring opportunities and better production opportunities for Hubbard.
All three of our wide receivers that we're going to debate, whether being one hit wonder or here to stay, might all have a new offensive play caller next year, which could shake up some things. We're going to get into that right after a quick break. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. There's 4 really fun games this weekend, but so many bets to choose from on the app. So go check those out. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so the Seahawks fire Ryan Grubb after 1 year. That was their OC. We'll see who they bring in. But Jaxson Smith-Njigba had a really solid second season after a bust of a rookie season, right? He finishes as the wide receiver 10 overall in fantasy. I do want to point out, though, in fantasy points per game, only wide receiver 22. So I do think his ending, because he played the full 17 games, makes him look better than he actually was. Some really nice games in there. A lot of just, wide receiver 2 mediocre games as well. I'm leaning more towards JSN will never be a top 12 wide receiver in like fantasy points per game and always kind of be like that Devonta Smith where he's, a solid enough wide receiver 2, but also inconsistent.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 ways to look at it. He could be that type of receiver, the number 2. The other way you can look at it is this the new Amon-Ra St. Brown, where he's a slot-based, outside capable number 1? And why I say he's number 1 is there's a chance this team could move on from DK Metcalf. Metcalf had a kind of an up and down year. I don't think he's lived up to the expectations they're having. I mean, he has a very low catch rate. He's pretty inconsistent, can disappear in games. Well, Smith-Njigba was all over the field for Geno Smith making plays. That's the other thing is, are they fully committed to Geno Smith? Are they going to potentially draft his replacement? Will we have a transition like we saw but earlier, the Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix Jr. thing? Will that happen in Seattle with the new offense? The offense obviously was great for JSN. Everyone thought it was going to be great for Metcalf, the up-tempo passing game of Ryan Grubb. It was not. So I think JSN was taken as the first wide receiver in that class because he was special. I mean, I think there are little things he can do, run routes, get open, but I think he's more like the other guy with 3 names, Amon-Ra St. Brown, or I guess he has 4 names, but JSN, ARB, whatever you want to do with these guys. I think there's some potential there to be that type of receiver. We've seen all these Ohio State guys do it. Like Garrett Wilson needs a quarterback, but we've seen Chris Olave even do it when he's healthy here. All these guys are extremely talented. This Ohio State pipeline. Marvin Harrison Jr. will get going. We'll see Jeremiah Smith probably be an elite fantasy receiver at some point soon here. So it's just the system. They're always pretty reliable. And I do think that Jason really could operate as their number 1. So I'm going to say he's not a one-hit wonder for me. I guess I don't know how you decided on the end, but I think given he was taken to the 40s and he finished as a wide receiver 2, that was a really good breakout season. I'm not going to say he's top 12, but I think top 20. I think he's here to stay like that going forward.
Yeah, I think he's definitely here to stay. I don't think he's a one-hit wonder. I just don't know what his ceiling is.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like he could, I mean, if he gets the targets, he could do well. It just comes down to what kind of offense he's in, who's his quarterback. There's a lot of things changing. So he may be drafted a little too high this next year, which might keep me off of him. But I do think he will be a solid fantasy wide receiver moving forward. Now, Jameson Williams is very interesting to me because the first 2 years of his career, I mean, massive bust, right? But he finishes as the wide receiver 20 in fantasy points per game this year. That's more than Jaxson Smith-Njigba, or higher than JSN by one slot. But the thing about JSN is that he's so explosive, right? He doesn't need a ton of targets, but he had 8 games with 75 plus receiving yards this season. Only Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Brian Thomas Jr. had more such games. He was tied with CeeDee Lamb and AJ Brown with the 8. He had 6 games with 75 yards and a touchdown this year. Only Jamar Chase and Brian Thomas Jr. had more, tied with Justin Jefferson and AJ Brown. And then he had 3 games with 120 yards and a touchdown this year. That was tied with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. So, like, he had a really, really good year. Now, does Ben Johnson leave? Does that change things? That could be the worry. But I do think Jameson Williams has figured out the NFL, and I think he's here to stay.
Yeah, remember when people were talking about midseason or even last year, Lions have to go get a wide receiver. They have to get another weapon, and they don't have enough. They don't have enough between Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta and some of these other guys they're working in, like the Josh Reynolds types, right, or Khalif Raymond types. But Jameson Williams kind of quieted that noise, right? When he started to make the big plays, and we knew that's what he was drafted for. Again, another Ohio State receiver via Alabama. So he went to both schools, so that's a pretty good pedigree there. We knew he had the talent all around to be a little bit more than a big playmaker. The only thing missing were 2 things, really his health and availability. I say that because he's also had suspension. So he didn't have a lot of continuity in this offense, right? I mean, we could lose Ben Johnson, sure. But getting just those reps weekly and staying in the lineup and being a consistent presence for Jared Goff, eventually Goff started to trust him. And again, he took those shots to him off the running game, deep shots. And then it started to be, okay, he's getting open on other routes. Let's throw to him some more. If Amon-Ra is covered or they double team him in the middle or try to take him out in the slot, we've got Jameson Williams to rely upon here. So I think there was a trust factor that developed here, that he was on the field and available. And you need to do that to get a veteran offense. And it is veteran offense in terms of Goff operating it and Ben Johnson having called us for a little bit now. So in that sense, you finally got Jameson Williams to kind of put it all together. And I think he's here to stay. Now, I think because of the other receivers here, including Laporta and St. Brown, I think you have to drop him to wide receiver 2. Still not bad in the top 24, but again, he was like JSN, he was going really late as a bit of a dark throw in the 40s. Now he's here to stay as kind of a wide receiver 2, at least, and he might have bigger upside than that going forward.
Yeah, and you would love just Ben Johnson to just stay forever. That might shake up some things. Again, we might be worried about a lot of these pieces on the Lions offense, but that's something to worry about down the road if that happens. Now, the last wide receiver I want to talk about here, Jerry Jeudy. And this one seems so weird, right? Because he was so good with Jameis Winston. So good. I mean, he averaged over 100 receiving yards per game in the 7 starts with Jameis Winston. The other quarterbacks, not so much. He didn't really do anything with Deshaun Watson, or no one does anything with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, so you can't put that on Jerry Jeudy. And the one game with Bailey Zappi at the end, he got 13 targets, only 6 receptions, 63 yards. I can't hold it against him for stinking with those quarterbacks, but he's had a long history of stinking, right? And has only been good with Jameis Winston. So that makes me have to say one-hit wonder, especially since we have no idea who the quarterback's going to be for the Browns next year. They changed their offensive coordinator. Everything's being shaken up. I think I got to go one-hit wonder with Jeudy.
Yeah, this is like a one-hit wonder that has put out like 5 albums, and then he finally gets one hit that makes the cut here, because he is a guy that I was not interested in at all. Like in Denver, he had all the opportunity in the world. He didn't do that. Then I thought he had some opportunity here. Replacing Amari Cooper, we saw the flashes. Again, you're right, with only Jameis Winston. You had Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Bailey Zappi, and Deshaun Watson. Oh, yeah, remember him? He played still at some point this season. He did not look all that effective. And Jeudy had to be by default, right? They just didn't have a lot. there without Amari Cooper. Once that trade happened, I mean, yeah, there was a big void. They needed to throw some targets his way. David Njoku had some injury issues as well. So it was by default they had to go there because Cedric Tillman, he was a flash and you couldn't get him going. He looked promising at one point, then he disappeared. So then you look at this situation. The Browns are picking number 2 overall in the draft. Now, I'm not sure they'll go after Travis Hunter or if he will be available because the Titans are picking 1. But they have some good wide receivers here early. Titterell and McMillan would be ideal. He'd be number 1. So that would displace Judy right away as the top target. Plus, we don't know where they're going to go to quarterback. Jameis Winston is a free agent. Deshaun Watson has torn his Achilles again. I don't think they're going to try Bailey Zappi or DTR. So I have no idea. And we don't know exactly how this offense will transition with Kevin Stefanski calling plays with Tommy Reese under him, right? So I don't know what to expect. There's too many variables, and Judy doesn't give me enough talent to say he's going to do more than what we saw in 2024 or maybe ever again.
Yeah, Jameis Winston can really make some guys look good because he will just, keep throwing bombs to you no matter what. We're going to get into a couple of quarterbacks and tight ends. One right away, I'll just say, I don't think we're going to have to talk about much. Sam Darnold, one-hit wonder all the way, but we will get into that right after a quick break.
All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. Let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. LinkedIn Jobs has been great for organization. I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Small businesses are wearing so many hats, so every hire is critical. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skills and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for a job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality candidates. Again, check it out from the experience of hiring and seeing things in an organization. Everyone is dedicated to helping you make the best hire, and how they're connected to their network, or they're going to take care of your LinkedIn Jobs. That helps you feel confident when you eventually pull the trigger on your hire. Hire smarter this year and find out your great next hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Michelle, it is time to close the show looking at some quarterbacks and tight ends. We'll talk about what you just teased here real quick. I'll get my take on it. Yeah, Sam Darnold is done here. I'm not buying in. I don't think he's going to get a starting job somewhere else. People have talked about the Saints a lot, but I would not be that. Were you into Derek Carr? Not really. As a quarterback, so it's a terrible situation. They got a lot of wide receiver concerns and value, all these things. So no matter where Sam Darnold goes, unless he somehow goes back to Minnesota and gets these weapons again, which I don't think is going to happen, you really can't go there. So it was nice knowing Sam Darnold's fantasy value here in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, unless he has Kevin O'Connell helping him and holding his hand, he has Justin Jefferson to just catch the craziest of balls. No, Sam Darnold, I don't care if he gets another job, whether it be with the Giants or Saints or Titans, like he would stink there. And that's why it was always funny. Anyone was going to go pay him. Like he was only going to be good in this system because we've seen him in other systems and he was garbage. He's going to be terrible again, wherever he goes, if he does get another opportunity. Oh, Sam Darnold just drives me crazy. And then anyone who believes in that man. Let's move on to another guy I do believe in, Bo Nix. I thought he had a very impressive rookie season, especially considering most people did not believe in him. But I think what was most impressive about his, especially with his fantasy value, was just how much he ran, right? And how much yardage he got on the ground, over 400 rushing yards. Like you will take that, especially when he's throwing nearly 30 passing touchdowns as a rookie. And he averaged 18.7 fantasy points per game. That was 8th among quarterbacks. And there's only been 4 other quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks, to start at least 8 games in the rookie season to average more points than that. It was Cam Newton, Justin Herbert, RG3, and Jaden Daniels this year. So I thought Bo Nix was spectacular, and I expect him to continue to improve, especially like he had Cortland Sutton and what else? Like they're going to put more weapons around him. I like Bo Nix moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I talked a lot about Jane Daniels and I liked it, but Jane Daniels was still getting a lot of hype as a QB1 at the back end.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say I got the greatest value, but I was happy to take him a little bit ahead of the markets. But Bo Nix is way down there. He was not even thought of as a fantasy pick. And it was hard for even people as he was producing in most weeks to just trust him and say, we're going to play Bo Nix. Like just doing that was difficult for a lot. I don't think he was an every week like automatic no brainer play because he was a rookie, but in the right situations at home, he really came through a lot throughout the season. So Bo Nix really surprised me. Again, part of it is Sean Payton and the Joe Lombardi system. Part of it is just Bo Nix is a very seasoned quarterback. I mean, kind of like Jane Daniels. They were on a lot of programs and played a lot of college football. So he was a very experienced quarterback going in, very accurate, getting the ball quickly, very good athlete, as Michelle said. That was an underrated part of his game, but not anymore. So when you look at it, I mean, yeah, Cortland Sutton, their receiving core is actually not as bad as we think, like going forward. They'll make some changes, but Devon Bailey was pretty good in the slot. You had Troy Franklin, his college teammate, come on down the stretch. We'll see what they do with Marvin Mims, but you think they could just add one weapon to this? And another thing they could add that could make a big difference is a tight end. And there's a couple tight ends they could look at in the first round there in Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren. If they get one of those guys, then you're starting to see the pieces there, right? I mean, Adam Troutman, Greg Dulcich, those guys. Troutman would make a catch here or there, but he was not an involved part of the offense. So if you get a tight end there, upgrade this running game where you have a reliable receiver in the backfield. Javonte Williams can cut it. Joe McLaughlin, their so-called change of pace, can cut it. I don't think Tyler Bidet is going to do it. I don't think Audric Estime is going to be that player. So go out and get a back that can handle this. So I can also see them going in that direction in the first round should Genty fall a little bit there. But overall, again, tight end, back who can catch, add another wide receiver for depth. And I think you're cooking with gas here with Bo Nix going forward.
Yeah, I really do too. And I did not think I was going to be sitting here talking about how much I like Bo Nix after his rookie season, but here we are. And there's just one tight end I want to hit on because like there's other tight ends that were okay this year, but one really, really broke out of nowhere, right? Jonnu Smith in like his 100th season in the NFL. He had his career year by far in pretty much every metric. Now Tua targeted him like crazy. Right. He does still have one more year on his contract with the Dolphins, and this was his first year. So maybe this is just how he's going to be used in the system. Tyreek Hill could be gone. He finished tight end 4 in fantasy points this year behind Brock Bowers, George Kittle, and Trey McBride. Is Jonnu Smith a guy we want to draft early next year, or was he just a one-hit wonder?
Yeah, you just have to consider some of the other options, right? I mean, if those two guys I mentioned, Loveland and Warren, go somewhere, we did see Brock Bowers produce right away, but then we haven't seen the other first rounders recently, Kyle Pitts and Dalton Kincaid, live up to their hype in terms of how you want to use them. So it comes down to what's available there. I think you look at some guys that have upside behind like a Tucker Kraft, you really can't go there, right? You have to see what's going on with the Packers, or you look at K-Dot and had a mini breakout of the Bucks, but the end of the season hurt. So you really don't feel like, okay, I'm going to do that. But Jonnu Smith, somebody you have to consider, and this Dolphins team could really stink. So watch out for it because, again, if they have to move Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle already wasn't involved, I mean, Jonnu Smith might be their best option going forward, and that would make Tua throw to him quite a bit. So, again, it was surprising, but then when you look at the profile of Jonnu Smith going back to the Titans, he was underused with the Patriots. He's always been a good athletic receiver. We thought he was just going to basically be the new Delaney Walker, and we finally saw that. Go figure it, another like 49ers like system here with Mike McDaniel. So again, we'll see what we get from Jonnu. We thought he was going to be more of that gadget player running back that they would put in to steal touchdowns from Devon Achane, but he became a regular part of this offense because they needed it. So I don't know what you're going to get. I mean, Dolphins arrow is pointing down as an offense as a whole, but that actually could push Smith up as being a more needed target for this team in 2025.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. Like, I'm not going to be interested in drafting him if he's higher than the 5th round, but if he's like in the 6th, 7th round, I would definitely then start considering Jonnu as long as the Dolphins don't add a bunch of other pieces, right? We'll see how the offseason goes for them. But that is it for today's episode. Tomorrow, we're going to start talking about the divisional round matchups and some good daily fantasy picks for the weekend, just to make your weekend more exciting. Friday, we'll get into our prize picks and FanDuel lineups as always. So we have 2 more shows for you this week. We will talk to you tomorrow. Thank you all. Have a good night.